people in the streets of Baltimore are celebrating after the city's chief prosecutor brought down charges on the officers involved in the death of the detained 25-year-old Freddie Gray. However, many say much more needs to be done. Our correspondent, Clayton Kahn, has more.
Here at the corner of Pennsylvania and North Avenue, epicenter of protests in Baltimore City, people celebrate in the streets for the first time since 25-year-old Freddie Gray was killed. The city's attorney general announced that charges will be brought against the officers involved in the man's death.
It will make it better, and I feel like hopefully, especially for the younger people, they got to have something to look forward to.
The announcement has calmed to a degree tensions in a city that has been occupied by the Maryland State National Guard for a week. Meanwhile, the killing of Gray has united many people in the city and has even brought members of the city's major rival gangs together.
Now this brother is my brother. He's not a thug. This brother is my brother. He's not just a blood. This brother is my brother. Black. All these guys right here, I know them. And I came together, and we gonna do this thing together.
My God!
However, other residents hesitantly celebrate the authorities' declaration on a case that has brought police brutality and racial profiling back on the national and international stage.
Start, but it's not the end. You know, now we need convictions, but we had to start somewhere. And the looting and the riot, well, I wouldn't say riot, the uprising and the demonstrations were not in vain.
It was at 11 a.m. on Friday that Marilyn Mosby, the city's chief prosecutor, declared that Freddie Gray was a victim of homicide and that 6 officers involved in his arrest would face a slew of charges.
Is being charged with second-degree depraved heart murder, involuntary manslaughter, second-degree negligent assault, manslaughter by vehicle by means of gross negligence, manslaughter by vehicle by means of criminal negligence, misconduct in office for failure to secure a prisoner, failure to render aid.
Meanwhile, protests and marches continue in the city, with racial justice activists through poem calling attention to many other forgotten victims to police abuse.
Segmented, cementing women to the corners of adversity to struggle in pain silently. See, there is no question. Do Black lives matter? Yes. But do Black women's lives matter a little less?
According to the mayor of Baltimore, at least 5 of the officers involved in the murder of Freddie Gray have been detained, and mass marches are expected throughout the weekend. Clayton Kahn, Telesur, Baltimore City.
Protests were also held yesterday around the U.S. in solidarity with Baltimore and with the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as to mark May Day. In Seattle, police arrested 16 people as protesters denounced police brutality and racism. Police officers used pepper spray. Large protests were also held in New York and Chicago.
As millions of workers worldwide marked International May Day, hundreds of Colombian unionists took to the streets to denounce their precarious labor conditions, which they blame on the neoliberal policies that for decades have been implemented in the country.
These policies have ruined employment, have ruined the national industry, as all priorities are mainly given to the multinationals that come here to exploit our workers and also to steal our natural resources and all the wealth our country has. This is why this May Day we must express our position against neoliberalism.
As part of the neoliberal policies, unionists denounced the increasing attempts of privatizing public sectors, such as the healthcare, social security and education systems, which have led to the worsening of the labor conditions for state workers.
80% of the state workers in this country are being employed under informal contracts. Nowadays, staff personnel with decent and dignified salaries are non-existent.
Among the state workers, teachers from public schools have the worst salaries. Today, they joined the May Day demonstration, denouncing an economic model that is turning education into a business rather than a right.
We reject the current economic model, the free trade agreements, and all the privatization processes underway. We also want to say to Colombians that we workers are struggling for peace, but a peace with social welfare. We struggle for a Colombia with a strong economy, with equality and justice.
Unionists also voiced their support for Colombia peace process, while recalling that the unionist movement is one of the biggest collective victims of this country's violence.
In the 28 years of existence of the Central Union of Workers, around 3,000 union leaders have been assassinated. That means an average of 100 have been assassinated per year, and 2 a week.
In the wake of this International May Day, Colombian workers and unions have insisted in the importance of labor rights as a fundamental part of peace with social justice. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá.
During the May Day celebration in Honduras, the country's working class demanded respect for the rights that are under attack due to neoliberal policies that are advancing privatization and attacking worker
Honduras'
unions.
main cities were the scenario of thousands of workers that went to the streets to commemorate May 1st in a general protest against the actual policies that are closing public companies to sell them to private corporations without recognizing the workers' rights that are being fired by hundreds since 2014.
The power of unions in public companies is being reduced. The purpose is to hand over private companies, and in that sense there is only going to be a small amount of workers. Since last year, the suspension of public workers was increased.
Almost 2,000 employees have been dismissed in less than a year, and the government is trying to control unions, especially those who are critical to its neoliberal policies.
The struggle against the capitalist system continues, and we are seeing it in the streets of Honduras, Europe, in South America, and all across the world. And now even more that capitalism has abandoned its policies that allowed unions and agrarian reform, that allowed the government's intervention in the economy, that controlled monetary policies. This model has been replaced by neoliberalism that's even more inhumane, that doesn't allow workers' unions, agrarian reform, or the participation of the state in the economy.
The Honduran working class demanded the respect of their rights and called for a general organization to face government in a more political participation. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Millions of people also marched in Cuba and Venezuela, celebrating the achievements of workers' rights made thus far. Speaking at a May Day rally in Caracas, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announced that the nation's minimum wage will be raised by 30%. In Havana, around 1 million people marched in support of their revolution and the renewed relations with the United States.
The rescue teams in Kathmandu aren't giving up. They still hope to find survivors from the worst earthquake in 81 years. They're also looking for bodies beneath the mountains of rubble.
We are trying to remove from here, thus making to secure there's a people or not. We are trying to find, that's why we are said to protect from the disease.
As time passes, the chances of finding survivors recede, although one teenager was found alive 5 days after the quake. The number of homeless, injured and dead continues to rise, and the bodies are being burnt. Dozens of families wait their turn to say farewell to their relatives. This young man lost his father, but he still hasn't been able to cremate him.
When the earthquake struck, my father couldn't run because he had problems with his leg. They could have saved him in the hospital, but he didn't get the attention he needed.
The priest in charge of the rituals says bodies are piling up in neighboring buildings. While as many as 15 fires burn simultaneously here, a few kilometers away, people are doing whatever they can to get out of the city.
It's not possible to live here anymore. There's no electricity or water. Everything is decomposing. Food prices go up every day, and what the government promises never arrives. And the smell in some places is unbearable.
Despair mounts as aid barely trickles in. Those with nowhere to go have spent another day under canvas by the roadside. It could take them years to get back to normal.
Facts that have marked the course of history. productions designed in the English language and made for the English-speaking world. This is Documentary. Watch it on telesur.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.